Friends, it's Jess from jesscrafts.com, and today I have another 6x6 paper pad tutorial for you. This time, however, I chose a paper pad that was available at Michael's brand stores, and I know that not everyone, because I do have people who watch from all over the world, is going to be able to go to a Michael's, but I also know there's plenty of people who prefer being able to go to an actual store versus an online store. So I picked a Michael's pad. This one is called Cheeky Pop. The last time I was at Michael's, it was still available and they run frequent sales on them. And I picked up the 6x6 paper pad as well as the sticker pack that goes with it. One of the reasons I was drawn to this particular set is because I felt like the papers and stickers would make good teenager cards. And as you know, as many of you know, I donate a lot of my cards to organizations that serve children, but children includes all the way to teenagers, and sometimes the cutesier cards I make may not be as well suited to them or appeal to them as much. So I decided to give this paper pad a try and see if I could make some things that would appeal to an older age group. I also liked that there were a few things in the paper pad that I thought could also work for male teenagers as well, because I think that a lot of paper crafting stuff tends to be like super cutesy, and while that may appeal to some boys and men, it might not appeal to all of them, and the same thing for girls. They might not be interested in cutesy and pink as well. So with this paper pad, a 6x6 piece of paper was able to cut two of the Cat Scrappiness stitched Wavy square. Wow. Two Cat Scrappiness stitched Wavy rectangle dies. I think I got it that time. So I was able to cut not the largest, but the second largest, and then the smallest out of the same piece of paper, which gave me some interesting detail. The only thing to consider is that the second largest shape leaves a pretty substantial white border. Now, in this instance, I was pretty okay with that because I thought it was going to give me a little bit more versatility and make these cards look a little bit different than some of the other ones that I had recently created in 6x6 paper pad tutorials, because I was using a slightly different set of shapes and things to work with. So for many of the papers, actually, I think for all of them, I did cut the second largest wavy stitched rectangle, and I was able to use that. But then for the remaining paper, I decided on a few different options. But I did like that die gave just a little bit of interest to all of the backgrounds. I will say that I think having a high quality cardstock card base becomes really important if you're going to leave a wide border. If the cardstock is a bit on the cheaper side, the wider border doesn't tend to look so good, and I can't quite explain why, because white is white, but something about it having that bit of weight. Also, they stand up a little bit better. They kind of feel a little bit better in your hand. They're not so floppy. So I really prefer the thicker card bases. I do use Michael's 110-pound Recollections cardstock for most of those. So if you're picking up this paper pad, you could pick up that thick cardstock, use a coupon, get a good price. It's not really that much more expensive than some of the cheaper cardstocks, and adds a great deal. So as I create my cards today, I'm going to try to talk through some of them, but you're going to see a lot of the same sort of ideas repeated, and I'm going to use a lot of the stickers because I bought a coordinating sticker pack. What is interesting about the sticker pack, though, is that you won't have the same sticker more than once. So even though there was 2 of each paper, there wasn't 2 of each sticker. So I'm winding up creating 2 cards that are very similar, and like the main aspects are the same. Like I use the same background paper and the same little rectangle in each of these 2 cards, but the end result is going to look quite a bit different just because I can't replicate the sticker. So I'm just going to choose something that's, similar, kind of works together. And that's what I think that was actually a positive thing, because You don't want the cards to look exactly the same. You don't know who they're going to, if you're going to donate them, you don't know who they're going to go to. And having a bunch of the same card can be problematic for some organizations. Other organizations say, you know, we could take up to like maybe 10 of the same card because they can distribute it to different hospitals or different, communities. Next up, on this one here, instead of using the small stitched rectangle, I just used the leftover piece to cut some plain rectangles, and that just allowed me to pick a slightly different size, because when you do the stitched rectangle you can't get two out of it, and so here I was able to get two slightly different size rectangles but without the detail. I was also able to take the border stickers that come and use one long border sticker to cover just a bit of both of those. And once I realized that measurement worked out, I used that a few times throughout the video. Often what I am doing is I am using the back side of the paper. These are double-sided papers, so usually the back of the paper coordinates with the front. So a single piece of paper is getting me a large background piece and a small little detail panel so that I can kind of arrange my stickers or whatever I'm going to add. And I believe I don't even incorporate any stamp sets, that I really just kind of stick with the stickers and make it work. I don't have a sentiment on the cover or the front of each card because I don't think you need one. And even though you could go into your stamps and easily add one, I just wanted to show what you could do with a pretty limited group of supplies. That's kind of always my challenge with these 6x6 paper pad tutorials. To show you that you don't need a lot of supplies, you don't need to spend a lot of money to make a lot of nice cards and to give back to the community through your hobby. When I cut out the background panel and then a panel from the side, I was still left with these size strips. So I have these in all kinds of pattern papers from the set, because these are what's kind of like when you cut out the large stitched wavy rectangle, this is what's left at the bottom. So that might take up like, say, 4.5 to 5 inches of it, but you're left with this chunk. And I will have better measurements over on my blog. So I'm going to show pictures of all of these on my blog, and I'm going to have some measurements underneath as much as I find that to be possible and helpful and useful to you. So I when I'm working with these paper pads, I try to figure out common shapes that are just going to come of the papers and how I can combine them so that I can reuse ideas. So once I realized that these strips do fill out a card pretty nicely, except for that there's a small gap, because if I were to scrunch them all together, the tops and bottoms would be a little bit too wide. I thought I could add a border sticker into the center. However, you could also just trim off the tops and bottoms, and that would get rid of that extra border, and you wouldn't have a standard A2 size card, which would be fine as well. I was just sticking with the standard A2 size. So I added that border sticker in there, and to make sure that the border sticker was going to be exactly the right size, I just took another piece of because I said I had all these scraps of the same exact size, I just took one of them, lined it up with the border sticker, and trimmed it off so that it would work out nicely. I did find that because this blue paper here on the bottom was kind of plain, I didn't like just leaving it. It didn't have a pattern of its own. It didn't have enough sort of visual weight to it. So I just added a few stickers in there. And I'm going to create a couple of cards similar to that. Here, I was just combining a couple others, and again, I would just pick out a border sticker that I thought matched. I would, mix up the colors. I didn't use them all in one go, but it's kind of something I know I can return to as I am working through my scraps. Now, I found that using the same shape can get a little, everything can start to feel like it's kind of the same and you're not making different cards. So I always try to come up with different ways. I can, if I put it in the bottom right-hand corner, then on the next one, I might try to center the same panel because they're the same exact die cuts, but if I mix it up a little bit. Or here, I turned it on its side. So instead of it being up and down in a sort of portrait fashion, I'm now putting it in a landscape fashion, and I am taking the large panel, instead of centering it, I am putting it off to the left and letting that other smaller panel hang off a bit for some added interest. You could also use pop dots on some of them, or foam tape, whatever, to give a bit of dimension to some. Or here, I looked through my scraps and I wanted to add another paper layer so that they stood out a bit more. So I just found a different scrap that I didn't have a purpose for yet, and I pulled that in. I found that this paper pad was a little bit challenging, just because even though the papers on the back and front coordinated really well with each other, not every paper in the collection matched every other paper in the collection. There were some that had a lot of pink, and then others that had nothing to do with that. They were, greens and blues, and they just were a little bit tricky to match. Versus when I work with the Doodlebug paper pads, every single paper pretty much matches each other, and I just did not have that with this collection. I still found that I could work with it and that there were enough things tying them in, but because some of these papers also were pretty bold patterns, like the donut and pizza pattern that you're looking at, that I don't think I ever used the front of it because I just found it to be such a bold pattern. Or the cats, and there's I think a fruit paper that's really bold as well. Cats and fruits didn't really seem to go well together, so I had to kind of take those things into consideration. Again, I'm taking that border sticker and stretching it across two of these papers because this is a sort of donut paper, like an icing paper. It has sprinkles. And so I wanted to try to incorporate it back into the cat paper because the colors were similar, but the sprinkles didn't really have much to do with the cats. So I put the cat border across them, and I felt like that tied them a little bit back to each other. The sticker pack that I purchased to go with it had quite a few letter stickers. So I was able to spell some sentiments, which again saved me from having to use stamp sets if I didn't want to. I also really liked those corner stickers. I think it's just called photo corners. And I was able to kind of go in and add a little bit of detail with those. I even found that once I completed almost all of the cards that I made with the collection, I was able to take the sticker pack, go back, and just see if there was any place I could add an extra sticker to use up some more of the stickers. I will say that the fact that I had so many stickers left over after I used all of the paper was a bit disheartening because I wasn't really sure what to do with all the leftover stickers once the paper was gone because they didn't really match up. In this instance, I'm going to do a giveaway with them because that just, as a little way of saying thank you to all of you. So if you leave a comment, I will be sending out the extra stickers to a commenter. And that way, maybe if you pick up the paper pad, you can avoid buying the sticker collection or you can incorporate these. But another thing would be great is just, it would be a cute little thing to slip into some of the cards. There are a few organizations where you send a card to a specific child and you are able to include a little pack of stickers or something inside of the card and still mail it with a regular stamp. It would also be great just for your own kiddos. I loved stickers as a kid. I'm a teacher and I know that I could, easily get rid of them in my classroom, but I just wanted to share a few ideas in case you don't work directly with kids. You are able to send them off with the cards at times, and I will leave you a link in the video description. And in fact, it's always in the video description, the link to my blog page where I share all kinds of different places that you can donate cards so that you can find an organization that suits you best. Many of them are US based, but I think there may be one or two international organizations on that list. So now I'm trying to mix it up again. And so this time, rather than having my whole my whole card portrait, making the card landscape will allow me to, or allow the design to look a little bit different. Also, instead of using the border sticker as just a stripe all the way across, I cut the banner edge into it. That gives it a little bit more interest. I'm making a point to try to use as many of the natural greetings as I can from the sticker pack. No reason to leave those hellos unused because they make a perfect greeting for the general cards that I like to make. I also am using the donut paper, so I'm trying to pull in the stickers that coordinate. There are a couple of stickers that match each theme of the collection, I want to say. Like there's like a couple of fruit themed papers and a couple of fruit themed stickers, or there's like outer space stickers and outer space paper. So it does have that element of like automatic coordinating and automatic matching, which is pretty nice. Then there are a few simpler patterns that don't have to match the stickers perfectly. And again, I did want to try to use as many of the stickers as possible. Again, just to show you the value that you can get and how much you can do with a limited amount of supplies. So this time I'm going to spell out a sentiment. And the reason I chose the sentiment that I did is not only because it used up a lot of letter stickers, but also because then it could allow me to use up some more of the fruit stickers. There was like a whole sheet of fruit stickers besides the little bits of fruit stickers here and there. They were kind of like an extra popular one. So I thought it would allow me to pull in a few more of those stickers. I was having a hard time figuring out how to use things like the sour and sweet and fruity sort of like sayings because they didn't really seem to incorporate, but I think you could mix them with stamp sets and try to create like punny sentiments. But at this point I was just, like I said, not trying to pull in an extra stamp set, but I think you certainly could, and you would be able to use up a few more like that. Here again, I am finding little scraps that work out well. Those yellow scraps are actually slightly different, and they could have been incorporated into a similar card like I had done those striped cards earlier where I put 3 stripes in a border sticker. But I was trying to make things look a little bit different, so I wanted to use them behind some of these generic rectangles. None of these are cut with the stitch die except for the background, because all the backgrounds are cut with the large stitch die. But this is instead what you get if you don't cut the smaller stitched rectangle out of your piece of paper. You can get 2 of these smaller rectangles. They're like a little bit wider and shorter than the stitched ones. And I was able to layer those yellow papers behind them for just a bit of interest. I'm sorry, I feel like my voice is probably really scratchy, and I blame it on just the fact that I live in a state with super dry weather, so I'm sorry if my voice is coming off that way. I'm not sick or anything. It's just the nature of living in a dry place sometimes and talking a lot. Next up, there were all of these square stickers. And there was this background paper, this yellow You Rock paper that was just really bold. And I wasn't quite sure how to use it. I felt like nothing matched it. So I decided to just be bold with it and put a bunch of stuff that shouldn't match together and kind of make it look intentionally eclectic. So like knowing that the strawberries had nothing to do with the crystals, which had nothing to do with the fortune cookie, and just being okay with that and just incorporating fun and bright colors together, because that was kind of the theme of this paper pack, was a lot of just random fun bright stuff. But I did put them in a block arrangement just to add a little bit of order to it so that it didn't look really, really all over the place. Because if you put everything down in a random way on top of them being all random themed, it might come off as much busier than adding a little bit of structure by adding that grid pattern in there. I wanted to make another more neutral colored set of cards, but I was having a really hard time with that as I realized that there was like a ton of pink in this set. And this background paper here, that's the sort of cream color, I like that it was so neutral, but those are eyelashes. And on the other side, there are wide open eyes. And I was like, how do I make the eyelashes make sense? You know, why are there eyelashes on the pattern paper? So this pattern paper set is definitely not for everyone. As I said, I think they're geared towards teenagers. And so some of this stuff is probably trendy in a way that I just don't understand because I'm out of touch with teenage culture. But anyway, I thought, well, I guess the stars make sense with the eyes. So I pulled in the chunk of constellation paper I still had left and the one random astronaut sticker that I had. But the other one, I didn't have any astronaut stuff. So it's just a little, I kind of just relied on colors at that point. So, you know, I picked like a black border sticker to match the black paper. And with this paper pack, you're really going to just have to kind of roll with it a little bit and not get too hung up on being super matchy-matchy. So at this point, I'm not done creating cards, but I was just kind of trying to show you what I have left because I have no more of the large background panels that I had cut out. I had used every single one of those and turned them into a card, and now I just have like random large scraps left. And as you can see, the eye paper is one of them because I am confused by the eye paper. But I was dedicated towards really trying to use up more of that because that's quite a bit of materials left, even if they are seemingly random and all look like scraps. So I am going to start pulling these into cards. I'm taking the large strips and match some, like trying to take some of the bigger stuff and match it together first so that I can make some quick cards with scraps. And here again, I'm just going to like play around and pull in some things. And it's going to be challenging because like I said, the colors are a little bit all over the place, but also at this point, because the patterns are so bold, a lot of them do have a right way that they're facing. Like the cats, you know, you can't just turn that paper sideways. The cats will then be sideways. Or the paws, the eyes, the fruit matters a little bit less, but then there are words on a lot of the papers too. So again, you can't just kind of make them in whatever order. I was lucky that most of them, like even though they were scraps, there was still like 2 of each scrap because there was 2 of each pattern paper, which did mean that if I came up with a design, at least I could make 2 of the card and use up more scraps that way. So this little fruit scrap actually is still cut with the stitch die. I had done that, but then hadn't incorporated it. As I mentioned before, there are a ton of the fruit stickers in a variety of ways. And in a variety of the different sticker sheets. So I still had plenty of fruit. So I thought, well, that's a perfect reason to incorporate it. I'll try to pick some more neutral stuff to go with it. So I pulled in the green and yellow pattern papers there. And the star paper is a little bit random, but it added a little bit of black, which kind of toned things down a bit since it was busy. And there are some blacks in the fruit pattern paper. And so, I don't know. Again, I'd like to pretend like this was all perfectly planned out and coordinated, but with this paper pad, it just wasn't possible. And I hoped that by kind of talking you through it a little bit and showing you how I pulled things together, you would be encouraged to try to be a bit bold and figure out ways that you could use things that at first seem like they didn't go together or seem like they might be kind of destined for the trash bin. The juicy sticker is definitely, again, a little bit random. Like, juicy is not a sentiment. But at the same time, I feel like there's plenty of trendy things out there that just have random words on it. So I'm going to go with it, and I'm going to try to make sure that there's like maybe a like a fruit joke inside the card or something like that to make it make at least a little bit of sense. I have these teeny tiny little strip scraps, and at first they're pretty small. So you think, oh, well, I could just recycle them. No big deal. But actually, little tiny scraps like this sometimes actually make really great design elements because putting a lot of little things together to create a larger panel, I don't know, it just tends to look really good. Again, I do encourage you to have that thicker card base, as that helps add some weight to the card when there's not a lot of pattern paper on it to give it some weight. So I just kind of arranged them with typically things look good in odds. And here I went with an even number of strips. So that might not have been the classic design, but what I liked, or the reason that I went with them, is because it worked for the panel that I was putting it over. If I had just put 3 strips, I would have had to leave larger gaps between them so that the pattern paper, like the 3 strips was about the size of the square that I was putting down. And so I would have had to kind of space them out more so things hung off in a pleasing way, or I would have had to scrunch them too far together. I don't know, just the 4 kind of worked out. So like the rule of thirds or the rule of odds, whatever those things are, yeah, a lot of times those are great, but don't feel like you have to hold on to those rules, because sometimes that's not what looks best. So at this point, I'm pretty sure I'm done creating, and I do have quite a bit of like little strips of pattern paper, so I could probably try to bang out a few more, and I might have even after the video, because sometimes I do that. Like I'm a little bit tired of, like I've made a ton of cards at the end of the video, and I feel like I don't have any ideas, but if I come back a few days later, I can use up some of those scraps. But as I said, the stickers, I will be giving some of those away to a commenter. So feel free to just let me know, like maybe what card you liked, or what you liked about this video, or what I should do differently in a future summer video. Did you like seeing a Michaels paper pad, like a paper pad you can get at a big box store? Or would you prefer to only see big names that are available all over, like internationally? Anyway, this is the part where I mentioned before that I went back to see if I could incorporate a few more stickers onto my cards. Since I had so many stickers left, I had like little hearts and the photo corners, or whatever you call those little corner things. And so I thought, well, I could probably get a few more of these onto cards. There's no reason that I'm not using them up. So here and there, I was able to incorporate an extra thing, especially those gold corners. I was like, there is no reason that I have any of those left. They are so simple to use. They add a little bit of interest to any card. So I may as well go through and use them up. Same thing with the gold hearts. They were like foiled stickers essentially, so they are pretty simple to use. I did find, though, even though I had so many fruit cards, I could not get myself to use those fruit corners. They're just so busy. And this paper pad in general is pretty busy. And so sometimes you can embrace the busyness and embrace the chaos of them. And sometimes I just felt like your eyes need a place to rest. I can't keep making these so many patterns all over the place. But it was really nice to go outside my comfort zone and work with really busy papers and try to match them up and try to take leaps of faith and go with a pattern that at first I was like, there's no way those two things go together. But in the end, I was really pretty happy with them. And also in the end, it's just paper, and I'm going to donate a lot of these cards to kids who are a lot less afraid of pattern than we often are. So there's what's left of my sticker paper pad. And if you think that you'd have some fun with it, let me know. If you wanted to leave a comment and you don't want to be entered too, that's fine. You could just mention that. But here's a brief look at all of the cards that I made today. If you want to see some more and get some maybe more detailed measurements, you can head over to my blog. You can see a better detail here, like the stitch detail comes up in the photographs and it doesn't so much on the video. But hopefully this was helpful and inspires you to take a look at a paper pad and use it up and finally get rid of those things and maybe use up some scraps and some ideas for how to use up scraps effectively. I will leave links because Michaels does have an online store, so maybe you could pick it up online. And thank you so much for watching. Have an awesome day. Please subscribe to my channel if you'd like to see more.